Salutations, the name's Cavill. I won't shock anyone by calling Pixar the king of 3D animation. They're the childhood factory that hit us with masterpieces like WALL-E, Finding Nemo, Up, Ratatouille, Inside Out, Soul. But in a pantheon, not every god can be worshipped equally, and it's time we shed some light on the films that are part of nobody's childhood. Disclaimer, recognition says nothing about a film's quality. Think about how popular Minions is and how unknown Megamind is. In fact, these segments aren't supposed to be reviews as much as studies into why they fell short of the Pixar legacy, which is why the order is largely arbitrary. Cars is one of the most infamous franchises in animation history, and definitely the biggest blemish on Pixar's legacy. The first was decent, but its overwhelming marketability led to an unbelievable amount of selling out. With all that commercial love and critical hate, it's shocking how quietly the franchise died, with the third film making so much less money and not even catching the critics' attention. How did this titan fall so hard? One word. Boring. Cars 3 is by far the most boring film on this list. The first problem is pacing, as they spend the first 45 minutes repeatedly telling the audience that Lightning McQueen is too old to race. I get it's the main conflict, but that's a third of the film, doing what could be accomplished in a single line of dialogue. If that wasn't bad enough, the film is visually drab as well, which is mostly due to the framework. Cars 1 was 2 hours long, but only about 25 minutes were dedicated to racing. This made the races exciting, and helped you forget that you're just watching hunks of metal move in a straight line. Once the plot starts, Cars 3 is nothing but racing. Fireball Beach, Thunder Hollow, Thomasville, it's hitting the same note repeatedly, which quickly overstays its welcome. This effect is amplified by the fact that nothing is being accomplished in these scenes, other than developing the relationship between Lightning and Cruz. In fact, Lightning himself constantly complains about the lack of progress, which is a strange flavor of frustrating. The last problem is that the animation has gotten too good, actually. Cars was an amazing looking film, but they're limited by a 2006 physics engine. Look at Lightning when his tires pop. He should not be able to scrape that fast, but he does, and makes the film more cinematic. The physics in Cars 3 are a lot less exaggerated, which makes it feel like you're watching actual NASCAR. That sounds like a good thing, but this is a world of living cars. The premise does not lend itself to realism. When you boot up Mario Kart, do you expect something as tight and practical as Gran Turismo, or do you expect something more off the wall like lightning and turtle shells? Why is this film forgotten? One major reason is the release date, 2017. Cars' main demographic was 6-year-olds who had turned 17 by then. While it did okay at the box office, it did horribly compared to the first two, and the toy sales yielded similar success. I'm happy they gave a conclusion to Lightning's racing career because it's clear there's no Cars 4 on the horizon. Unless it's a video game, I hope. Driven to Win is better than Mario Kart and agreement is mandatory. This movie I'm hesitant to put on the list. Not the most hesitant, that'll be next entry, but as of 2023, Monsters U is getting a bit of a resurgence. It's no El Dorado, but I'm seeing more people come forward about how this film affected them, and thank God for that. It's about Mike and Sully studying to become scarers. When people tell Mike that he's too small to be scary, he essentially says a hater's gonna hate. He believes that if he works hard enough, he will accomplish anything. Genetics can't stop him. Sully is the antithesis, coming from a bloodline of apex scarers. Everyone expects Sully to be a prodigy, so he expects that too. Genetics are on his side, so he doesn't think he needs to work hard. He can just lay around and wait for success. On the surface, Mike and Sully are opposites, but they both have such giant egos that once they break the ice, they're instantly best friends. Mike has completely disregarded society, while Sully has completely internalized it, leaving both of them with the mindset that being scary is their identity. However, both their perspectives are shattered by the end of the film, as they realize the duality between destiny and will. Sully begins to fail his classes and people are disappointed in him, destroying his confidence and giving him an intense fear of failure. Mike tries to pull off a scare and fails, proving once and for all that it wasn't possible for him. The main theme is that not all people are created equal and we need to accept that, which is a message so incredibly hazardous that I doubt we'll ever have another animated film like this. I go so deep into the themes of the movie because it is the biggest problem.
Where is it? So, that's a cube of garbage.
I can still hear her little voice.
Hey, I can hear it too. How many kids you got in there?
Monsters Inc. is one of the most fun movies I've ever watched. The jokes are on point, every line is quotable, and the characters have such big personalities. It's like an hour-long episode of Smiling Friends. Monsters U, by comparison, is not fun. It's mean, it's introspective, it's like an hour-long episode of F is for Family. Monsters Inc. did have emotional scenes, but they didn't linger, they weren't the focus, which goes against the entire design of Monsters U. Why is this film forgotten? Because it wasn't what Monsters Inc. fans wanted. They would wait for Mike to give his iconic scream and instead be given an exercise in philosophy and prejudice. Anyone who wanted a film like this wasn't expecting it from Monsters U, or any animated film really. With Soul and Encanto, it seems like animated films are finally being regarded as real art with deep messaging. When Monsters U came out, I honestly don't think general audiences were ready for films like Megamind or Treasure Planet. Ultimately, this film clearly had no target demographic in mind, so I'm happy it found one a decade later. Here's a film that broke the public consciousness in ways most films dream of doing. Let's change our approach accordingly. What made this film remembered? For one thing, there's a 6-minute subplot about periods. I didn't misspeak, the first mention came at 2017, the last at 2330. That's just over 5% of the film, and yet it was the main topic of discussion. While nobody in this film is actually having a period, people say the red panda is a metaphor for one. If that's the case, then it's a pretty bad metaphor, unless periods come and go depending on emotion. Or unless the cure ritual is a metaphor for castration. Or unless Mei Lin selling the panda for $800 is a metaphor for... Actually, let's stop there. I have to assume it was a last-minute decision because you could easily remove each mention of periods and nobody would have thought the red panda was a metaphor. What else does this film have? Generational trauma. The thing is, that message has grown a bit taboo. It wowed everyone in Encanto, and Turning Red's reception was similar, albeit more skeptical. When Strange World did it, people started to see the writing on the wall, and when Elemental did it, we all collectively agreed the subject was dead. Then DreamWorks came along and resurrected it for Teenage Kraken, and now we're all saying, stop, go traumatize someone else's generation. As such, people are reflecting negatively on Turning Red, as it was the first film to see what Encanto was doing and copy it. Another thing people talked about was Turning Red's art style, as other than Soul, it was their first attempt to deviate from the Pixar standard Ratatouille style. While the film is nice looking, these compliments were incredibly overblown. The art looks like Illumination. Go on, tell me this woman isn't a gender-bent onceler. It's certainly more expressive than we're used to from Pixar, but it isn't in the shadow of The Good Dinosaur, a film they made 6 years prior. What's left when you take away the art, the periods, and the generational trauma? A cute story about 4 girls growing up together. It's a good film by all means, but not in the ballpark of Up or WALL-E. These 3 subjects were the only things keeping this film relevant, and each of them were too superficial to last. So when exactly did they wear off?
This film takes place less than a year after the September 11th terrorist attacks. I bring this up because it radically altered the culture of the time, in ways that make this movie feel exceptionally ignorant of the time.
This would be the 4th thing Turning Red was known for, and definitely the most prevalent. It's hard to discuss the film without hearing that it should have mentioned 9/11. It's Pixar's very own Pickle Rick. I might be seeing things that aren't there, but it definitely felt like a turning point. Suddenly nobody was interested in the periods, art, or messaging, it was all about the meme. And when the meme died, the 3 original talking points weren't solid enough to draw people back in. Imagine spending $200 million on a movie just to have one bad review kill it. This film was inescapable in 2018, making nearly $1 billion. Within a year though, it vanished harder than Yokai Watch, making this the film I was most excited to revisit. I was disappointed, however. Finding Dory vanished because it's Pixar's worst film. I mean that. Cars 2, that offers some ironic enjoyment. Good Dinosaur, it's the apex of CGI. Brave? That film at least has some cool concepts that it failed to use properly. Finding Dory, meanwhile, has no concepts. It's traveling across the ocean to reunite with family, as copy-paste as a sequel can be. In all fairness, Finding Dory Dory executes this plot differently. At the 20-minute mark, Dory enters an aquarium and has to get creative to move from exhibit to exhibit, unlike the first film, which was in the open ocean. I respect the attempt to keep it interesting, but it doesn't really solve the problem. In fact, it creates new ones. Think about that scene in Finding Nemo where Marlin spots the mask and swims to look at it. You remember how seamless that was? Only took about 5 seconds? We really take that for granted because whenever they find a plot point in Finding Dory, they dedicate a 10-minute scene just to traveling there, even if it's within their line of vision. This makes the film incredibly slow, as bad as Cars 3 honestly. Not helping is that these scenes are often led by Marlin and Nemo, whom share zero plot significance. They get separated from Dory in the beginning and spend the rest of the film looking for her. Dory does need to rescue them in the third act, but otherwise, you don't need a pencil to write them out of the story, you only need scissors. So this movie has 3 main characters. If 2 of them are pointless, how does Dory plug along?
Destiny. Destiny? Come on. I got a feeling. I think we should get in the bucket. Stop. Seriously, it says Destiny, and it is. No. We've got to get in that bucket.
I'm not going with you in that bucket.
All right, go get in that bucket. Bye. Hey, guys, I'm looking for my family.
This'll definitely ruffle some feathers because, like Monsters U, Finding Dory is about living with disabilities. Specifically the fact that Dory needs other people to help her with basic tasks. Unlike Monsters U, however, the message falls flat because the writers aren't fully committed to it. The scene where Dory's friends ignore her disabilities and tell her to go into the pipes, that's powerful and doing exactly what it's supposed to. It's contradicted, however, by several scenes where they imply that her disability is an advantage.
What is so great about plans? I never had a plan. Did I plan to lose my parents? No. Did I plan to find Marlin? No. Did you and I plan to meet? Wait, did we?
You can't portray Dory as simultaneously dependent and independent, but that's only half the problem. The other half is that Dory never listens to the people helping her.
Now remember, Destiny said follow the signs to the open ocean exhibit.
I'm looking. Something gets me to my family.
My family!
The world's most powerful pair.
Hey, we need to go that way. Left. Go left.
The message of assist disabled people doesn't function if you portray disabled people as uncooperative. The message is mixed beyond recognition, which is why I choose not to view this film as a PSA.
Jenny and what?
Those are their names. My parents are Jenny and Charlie.
Dory, wait!
Jenny!
Can't we just take a moment and come up with a plan?
Jenny! Charlie!
Are you crazy? Sorry, she's a little excited.
You don't understand. I remembered my parents' names. Jenny,
Dory,
Charlie!
these crabs are locals, and I get the feeling they're shushing us for a reason. You might wake up something dangerous.
Are you talking about like something with one big eye, tentacles, and a snappy thing?
Even in that case, however, Dory's uncooperative nature makes her supremely unlikable. The idea behind Dory in the first film was giving Marlin a second chance to be a father, and in this film she's even more helpless due to being on land. Despite this, she never feels even an instinct to consider other people's feelings, which causes most of the conflicts in the film. She nearly gets Nemo eaten, and the film just expects you to give her a pass. The worst of this abuse goes to the only good character, Hank the Octopus. He is so kind to Dory, and all he wants is a piece of paper that she got for free. It's useless to her, but it'll grant Hank the life he's always wanted, so she uses it as leverage for whenever she throws herself into danger. He deserves it so badly, you just want him to eat Dory and take it. To be fair, Dory is voiced by Ellen DeGeneres, so there was no real chance I would like the character, but even then, I was not ready for how unlikable Dory was gonna be. She's that special blend of helpless and inconsiderate that I haven't seen since Scrappy-Doo. Why is this film forgotten? Well, its main point of intrigue was the disability message that could not stand the test of time. Other than that, I have to assume the buzz around this film was only because it's a Finding Nemo sequel. It's hard to reassemble an entire cast after 15 years, and credit where it's due, they snagged nearly every character, even Crush the Turtle and Mr. Ray. It's a shame they were reunited by such a meandering plot and such an awful character. Before we unveil number 1, let's do some quick honorable mentions. A Bug's Life. This was Pixar's second film, so let's show it some mercy. You know how everybody loves Chicken Run for its visuals even though the characters and storyline are lame as hell? Well, reanimate Chicken Run in 1998 CGI and you get A Bug's Life. When it comes to hated animation cliches, this film is a goddamn mausoleum. Every plot point is a contrived misunderstanding, the villains are way more interesting than the heroes, it's a forced lie revealed plot, the cast is full of comic reliefs, and I could go on. Thing is, these ideas were a lot more fresh in 1998, and undoubtedly inspired more stories to do the same things. This is a film that's aged so poorly there is literally nothing left to remember. Except the Ladybug Drag Queen, I guess. Brave. This was once the black sheep of Pixar's library, but then a certain green dinosaur came along. It's been discussed less and less since then, but still comes up occasionally, so I decided to spare it. Planes. Despite being a Cars spin-off directed by John Lasseter, this film was released by Disney itself, so it doesn't qualify for this list, but if it did, it'd be number 1. Coco. I'm not sure whether this film counts because while it rarely comes up in Pixar discussions anymore, people adore it whenever it does. This seems to be a film that people love, yet never think about, like Over the Hedge or Peanuts. Incredibles 2. This film may be forgotten, but it has a ton of memes. That's kind of a legacy, right? Onward. Why is this film forgotten? I have no damn clue. I think about this film at least twice a week. For a Pixar film, it's got some awkward plot holes and pacing, but the characters and aesthetic are some of their strongest. It's easily my 5th favorite. If I had to guess, this film will get its own Megamind style resurgence someday. Lightyear. This is a unique genre for Pixar, military science fiction. I have no experience in this genre and can't offer any worthwhile commentary. If anyone watching has their own idea of why Lightyear is so forgettable, I'd love to read your comment. And the last honorable mention goes to Epithet Array. This might be presumptuous because the film is still in theaters. In a year I'm gonna look either really smart or like a giant douchebag, but I feel confident in calling Elemental Pixar's most forgettable movie. As previously stated, this film is number 4 when it comes to generational trauma, and that's definitely the biggest reason it'll be forgotten. Since I already went over public opinion in the Turning Red segment, maybe now would be better spent going over my personal opinion. Disney may have tackled generational trauma 4 times, but each instance has shown massive improvement. Firstly, has anyone noticed that Encanto has no generational trauma to speak of? Abuela's parents are never mentioned and the trauma is given to her by soldiers. Then she spends the film abusing her family, but nobody in the family copies that abuse, other than maybe Isabella. If Mirabel's mom began abusing her, that would be one thing, but instead they accidentally wrote Abuela as a generic abuser. Turning Red did automatically better by introducing Grandma Wu, and Strange World made leaps and bounds by casting the abuser as the protagonist. These parents repeated the exact same abuse they endured. Their only excuse was cognitive dissonance, and this is how Elemental takes the biggest step forward. Bernie was disowned by his father for not living the lifestyle his father wanted, so he opened a store to give his daughter all the financial freedom possible. She misunderstood this, however, thinking his dream was for Elemental to run the store. He tried so hard not to traumatize Ember that he went full circle and gave her the exact same trauma, which is so tragically real. If the generational trauma message continues rapidly improving like this, then I'm on board with Disney doing it over and over. The films themselves, though, are deteriorating just as fast, because Elemental is one of the most substance-free MP4s I've ever watched. Describing what's wrong with it is a twofold effort, because most bad films will try to do something and fail. Cars 2, for example, tries to be a spy film, but then every character is stupid and the villain's plan makes no sense. Elemental doesn't try to do much of anything, other than visual effects. Wade magnifies a ray of light, he gets sucked into a sponge. Ember's hot air lifts them off the ground, she changes color. While these moments give the world some much needed flavor, they bring scenes to a screeching halt. There are just way too many, and eventually I just need to groan. Not helping is that I can't honestly call it visually interesting. Impressive, sure, but not stylish. The character's actual shape and movement behave exactly like humans. There's one scene where Ember squirts oil on the ground to mutate, and I'm like, yes, there should be so many more moments like this. The main character is the biggest problem, as Ember has zero autonomy. Her decision making is at the mercy of 2 men, Wade and her father. The idea is that she feels trapped in the life Bernie designed for her, and Wade is telling her to go independent. This dynamic would be fine for a secondary character, but not a main. Wade ends up being the real protagonist because Ember is incapable of disobeying her father. You'd imagine a scene towards the end where she finally gains the confidence to confront her father, but you never get that. She only admits her feelings after a near-death experience. Remember how Encanto starts with Mirabel resolving to save the magic and ends with her confronting Abuela? How much would that movie suck if there were some secondary person forcing Mirabel to do it? The worst part is that Ember is constantly ignoring Wade's suggestions, which keeps her from accomplishing anything for most of the film. They visit an office, they visit a stadium, they visit his family, they visit a flower, but none of it builds toward a solution. She eventually thinks of one, one, but that scene is detached from everything I've mentioned. You could cut the majority of scenes without really affecting the plot. This would be not acceptable, but understandable if Ember and Wade were growing closer, but honestly, until the climax, Ember only seems to tolerate him. I can't tell if it's bad chemistry or if Ember is just a naturally hostile person, but look careful at the "I really wish I weren't here right now" button. If the romance leads nowhere, then how else does Ember spend the movie? Mostly just running the store with her father.
Still have much to prepare for Red Dot's sale.
Dad, I'll take care of it. You need to rest.
How?
I learned from the best.
I don't know what this says about the film, but these scenes were the only part I enjoyed. Ember honestly has so much more chemistry with her father than Wade. Maybe elements really can't mix. Jokes aside, I think removing Wade would fix the whole film. Imagine this. Ember loves her father and wants to run the store with him, but to save the store, she needs to go to Element City and blow a bunch of glass. She realizes how much money she can make doing it and realizes that it would give her a happier life. She would then need to make the painful decision to confront her father and leave the store. That would not only give Ember her autonomy, but cut down on wasted time. Also, just make them humans. As a culture, we've outgrown the need for racism metaphors, especially if they imply that some races scorch everything just by existing. Why will this film be forgotten? Because I honestly think it was only made to test new 3D modeling tech. It is impressive, the welding especially looked like a major pain in the ass, but they forgot to make a story out of it. If you want a rom-com, Rio is exactly this but better. If you want generational trauma, you've got options. Like Luca, I really don't dislike this film, but I haven't seen a film so doomed to obscurity since Abominable. Undoubtedly, you've noticed the pattern by now. Most of these films could be considered new, and while I don't think anybody hates Elemental, I'm clearly not the only person who's noticed Pixar's decline. What happened to make the newer films so much less memorable? The most obvious problem is the release schedule. In the past, Pixar released one film per year, but they often took a year off to keep polish high. Nowadays, it's common for Pixar to release 2 films per year, and let's be honest, nobody wants this. At the best of times, you'll get one good film and one bad film, like Inside Out and The Good Dinosaur. Most of the time, you'll get 2 mediocre films, like Cars 3 and Coco. They should stop churning out movies this fast, but let's be absolutely real with ourselves. Every animation studio is collapsing right now, either figuratively or literally. What's happening with Pixar is tolerable. Let's just pray they don't go the way of Marvel. Although, after comparing Pixar to so many other studios, I feel like I started this video from the wrong perspective. How many DreamWorks films would I consider forgotten? How many Illumination films? Most of them. How many Blue Sky films? All of them. How many Sony films? Not many, all things considered, but that's because the movies tend to really hit or really miss. Maybe it's okay for a film to come out without breaking the public consciousness. Turning Red is just as fun to watch now as it was before Enter. Maybe I should appreciate that we ever had a studio as incredible as Pixar, rather than condemning Elemental for not reaching that incredible standard. Like I mentioned, the entertainment industry seems like it's dying a horrible death. From journalists to streaming wars to the failing economy to AI to political polarization, it's clear we have a crash on the way. I don't know whether this will be as simple as the crash of Toys to Life or as history defining as the crash of Atari, but something that helps me is reflecting on the past. I made this video because I think it can help you too. Remember that no matter how bad the new Little Mermaid is, Disney can never take the old one from you. And this goes doubly so for older stuff you haven't seen. If you hate that Disney is now using script AI, vote with your dollar and unsubscribe from Disney+. Rather than watching Wish, maybe check out Rango, skip Primos, and catch up on El Tigre. What I'm trying to say is, don't be scared right now. Remember that Disney will always need you more than you need Disney.